Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the honourable member started his speech with the words, "After 9 years, evidence is clear." So let me tell him what evidence that is clear after 9 years of our government. From the high we have created 1.1 million jobs since 2015. From 8.1% high inflation rate in June 2022, it is now at 1.6%. The Canadian Consumer Index is at its 30 months high. We have the lowest deficit to GDP ratio amongst all G7 countries. We have got lowest debt to GDP ratio amongst all G7 countries. I know the honourable member is knowledgeable. I ask him to show one economic indicator that Canada, amongst all the G7 countries, one economic indicator where Canada is not the best.
Honourable member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Well, Madam Speaker, I mean, it's mighty generous of the member to ask me for one. I think I could name several. Our GDP per capita in this country has been collapsing under this Liberal government. It sounds as if these Liberals are saying that Canadians have never had it so good. I said in my speech, 2 million Canadians are going to the food bank. If that's not an economic indicator, I don't know what is. 1,400 and plus homeless encampments across this country. Canadians, this government is failing Canadians. They're talking about all of these GDP numbers. We have an article that recently came out that said Canada needs to stop chasing American-style GDP, as if GDP was like a theme, not an actual economic indicator. But under this Liberal NDP government, every single Canadian is worse off, I guess, other than Liberal insiders in this scandal, perhaps, who are very well off. Insiders are very well off under this government. But the GDP per capita of this country is collapsing under this Liberal government. And our dollar is losing strength under this Liberal government. Our dollar, which underpins our purchasing power, which will raise inflation when this dollar falls because of this Liberal government's policies. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Barrie Springwater, Oro-Medonte.
Thank you, Speaker. It was an honour and a pleasure to listen to my colleague from Sturgeon River Parklands give his great speech this morning on this scandal we're once again being faced with. I was very curious to hear after his remarks, a member from the Liberal side stand up and talk about how great the economy is in Canada. Well, in Barrie Springwater, Oro-Medonte, I'm hearing far from that. There are a lot of people struggling. Food bank is up. Over 7,000 people a month now in Barrie are using the local food bank. I'd like to ask my member from Sturgeon River Parklands if he's hearing the same thing as in his riding about the poor, tough economic times as I am in Barrie Springwater, Oro-Medonte.
The honourable member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I mean, this isn't an issue that's relegated to just one part of our country. This is an issue we are seeing across this country. And as we go into Remembrance Day next week, I think it's very relevant to talk about veterans food banks. There are veterans food banks in this country that are seeing a massive increase in the number of veterans who are reporting homelessness and who are reporting food insecurity. And the way that this Liberal government talks, veterans have never had it so good. And yet, veterans from my riding were told directly by the Prime Minister, Brock was told by the Prime Minister, they're asking for more than we can give. And when veterans are calling this government for help, you know what the response they get is, have you considered medical assistance in dying? It's shameful, Madam Speaker, what this Liberal government has allowed to happen to this country. They can try to hide behind all their funny accounting, but the fact is that Canadians are struggling because of this NDP Liberal government's policies. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Comments? The honourable member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Thank you, Chair. It's great to see everyone this morning. Chair, through you to the honourable colleague, Statistics Canada revised the economic growth for Canada from 21 to 23, revised it higher by 1.3%. The per capita GDP story that's being told or spun from the other side of the House actually doesn't work anymore. Our per capita GDP actually recovered fully after the COVID pandemic, even with global inflation. From 19 to 23, that story is not true anymore. Statistics Canada demonstrated it. A couple of the economic shops demonstrated it. And look, Madam Speaker, we know when Canadians go to the grocery store, we know the everyday prices they're feeling from global inflation. Our plan, we are helping Canadians. We'll always help them with affordability issues, a number of measures. Would the honourable member not agree that the numbers reported by Statistics Canada is a good news story for the Canadian economy, for both economic growth, per capita GDP growth, and for our future outlook, with the IMF giving us a 2.4% GDP growth for 2025, the highest in the G7 country, in the G7?
The honourable member Sturgeon River Parkland.
Madam Speaker, when I go out and talk to my constituents, I had a senior couple reach out to my office, and because this government during the pandemic told everyone to take CERB money, they said, just take the money, we'll deal with the issues afterwards. So, this senior couple, they didn't really know what they were doing, but they took the money. And once this government decided to claw that money back because it wasn't appropriate in the case of this family that they took the money, it impoverished this family. It sent them to the food bank, and they called my office and they said, Mr. Lloyd, we've eaten nothing but bread for 3 months. That's the record under this NDP-Liberal government, is that people can't even get the nutrition that they need. We're seeing malnutrition in children on the rise. We're seeing scurvy make a comeback, Madam Speaker. And yet these Liberals stand up in this House and tell Canadians, you've never had it so good. It reminds me of a quote from Marie Antoinette, let them eat cake. And that's what they say every day in this House, Madam Speaker.